My name's Steve Wise. What I'm doing right now, I'm really concentrating on my ministry, mostly to the motorcycle racing world, and as well as I speak to other various events and some churches here and there throughout the United States. And I've been able to travel over to Australia and been to Europe and with my ministry. It's been really, really good.
Tell us a little bit about your racing career. Here you were a pro racer when you started, that whole thing.
Well, you know, when I was 12 years old, let me rephrase that. I have a great dad, and when I was a young kid, about 8 or 9, 10, my dad would take me to races. It was flat track races and so forth. He took me to the Astrodome, and the very first Astrodome, a flat track in TT, and Gary Nixon won the first race, and that was my hero. Gary Nixon was my hero, and then so my dad would take me to a lot of races, and so I fell in love with motorcycles. And so I would come back home every week, and I would organize bicycle races with my Schwinn bicycles, and I'd get all our friends, and we'd race our bicycles all the time. And then my father bought me a CL90 when I was 12 years old, and I just wore that thing out, rode every day. I'd come up from school. I'm at school drawing motorcycle pictures, you know. People ask me, what are you going to be when you grow up? I'd say, I'm going to either be the president of the United States or a professional motorcycle racer. So it's kind of funny how that all turned out. I'm sure not the other one, but anyway, so I rode all the time when I was a kid. We lived in McAllen, Texas, and my dad, we lived on some property, and I'd ride down the road into the drainage ditch and had a great childhood. And then my father loved motorcycles as well, and my father always had the best of the best. I mean, everybody would have Triumphs and BSAs. My father had Montesas, Bultacos, Kawasaki P38s, and then I had my Honda, and then eventually he got me a 125 Honda. And but then my father, being a wise businessman that he was, he opened up a Honda shop. He was in real estate, and he opened up a Honda dealership in McAllen, Texas. And all we had to race was the XL 125. And my dad, with his great idea, decided to get the Pitton dealership so we could race. It's the only reason he got it, so I could race. And I mean, jumping ahead real quick and I'll come back, but it was really neat when I was inducted to the Hall of Fame. John Pitton was in the audience, and I told the story. I said how my dad had a dealership, and then my dad realized the four-strokes weren't able to compete with the YZ Yamahas and the RM Suzukis and the Hodakas and the DKWs at the time. And so I said, my dad decided to get a dealership, and I pointed out there, I said, and it was a Pitton. John Pitton, thank you very much. It was really a neat thing and a special thing for me to look at John Pitton out there in the audience and tell him thank you for developing the Pitton 6-day motorcycle. Because after I got the Pitton, I really began to win most of the races in Texas in the 125 class. And there was, you know, a lot of riders back then, and I was fortunate to really just have the talent, and we had the machinery. And then when the Honda CR came out, of course, my father being a Honda dealer, I mean, it was a no-brainer, and they were great motorcycles, and that's kind of took on there a new light with the CRs.
Tell us a little bit about your factory career. You were one of the few motocross guys to ever go road race and actually be competitive in road racing.
Well, you know, I was very fortunate because the way everything turned out, I got a ride with Factory Honda in 1978, and then I had a few really good years, and I really could have done a little better. Of course, we always could have, would have, but I had some strange bike breaks when I was winning Supercross races. 3 times the bike broke, and I hurt my knee a couple times. It was kind of weird, and we've all got those stories, but I'm saying it was a good career, but it could have been much better. But that's the way it is. But I was very fortunate to, at the end of my motocross career, win that Superbikers race, and then Freddie Spencer was happening to go to Europe, and they let me try out for the factory road racing part. And I tell you, it was pretty hairy in the beginning at Willow Springs Raceway with the winds at about 60 miles an hour. It was a miracle that I'm alive, actually, because I was trying to impress them the very first time ever riding a road racer, and it was pretty wild. I ran off the track a couple times about 130 miles an hour, and it was exciting.
What was the biggest difference between? Well, you actually did 3 forms of racing. You were a really good flat track racer. You were a phenomenal motocross guy, and you were one of the top road racers for your time. Explain what the difference is between those 3.
Well, I missed the Formula One championship by 1 point in 1982, my first year. Okay, see you tonight. And I was very fortunate. You know, I guess I just had a God-given ability, natural talent. And if people ask me about my career, I wouldn't consider myself a Bob Hannon, motocross, or David Bailey, or Kenny Roberts, or Eddie Lawson, or Freddie Spencer in road race. But I was right there with all of them in that fray. They were just a little notch ahead of me in their field. But going from motocross into road racing, it's definitely a different story. And hanging it out and sliding the bike around at 130 miles an hour, and it'll get your attention. But I loved it. I loved it. Of course, the Superbikers really was my claim to fame. I really dominated that pretty much. And the last year, we put this on tape, and this is not a crybaby though. This isn't a crybaby thing. The last year when Danny Chandler beat me, he had a works motor and I had a stock motor, and I didn't know that until 20 years later. Cliff White told me. I had no idea why he kept passing me the straightaway. I couldn't figure out why. He'd just go blow by me. I'd pass him in the dirt and he'd blow by me. I'm going, what's going on here? He was on the motocross team at the time. I was on the road racing team at that time. And we didn't talk. And the motocross team, Dave Arnold will admit this, he gave him a good motor, had about 5 or 7 more horsepower than mine. And so I didn't win 3 times in a row, but I could have won that 3 times in a row. And I did find out 20 years later. Cliff White told me at Texas Stadium one year, he called me over and he said, you know what? I've been thinking about this for a long time. I'm going to tell you what happened that race. I'm going to tell you why you got beat. Anyway, but you know, Godspeed for Danny. And I'm only saying that for the camera. We're not going to have that because I love Danny, and I'm glad he was able to win it. But that was really my greatest. I loved the pavement and the dirt, and I really just, it was natural to me. And then of course, you know, now if everybody would have wanted to come play with me there, then it would have been a different story. I would have been there, but you know, when Kenny Roberts came over there, Freddie Spencer came there, they couldn't even compete in the Superbikers race. And Eddie Lawson did though. Eddie was good. But going from the Superbikers to the road racing, it was even different. I mean, Superbikers is the middle of motocross and road racing, no doubt, because you're still riding with a motocross style, but you've got to take pavement lines and really know how to arc the corners well and keep your speed up real high in the Superbikers event, which carries over to the road racing event. But the style is the same as motocross and the Superbikers. The road racing is just incredible. It's a beautiful sport. You just laying the bike down and really feeling the tires, and it's great. And I was very fortunate to do good there. I had a few mishaps that ended my career early. I was diced with Michael Baldwin for the lead at Laguna at the Riverside, and he had about 20 feet on me. We passed a lap rider that was leaking oil, and he got in right in the turn before I did, and I got right in behind the lap rider and hit the oil slick, so that kind of ended my career. That pavement's real hard, by the way. It hurts really bad, but it's been all good. It's all good, and I'm very thankful that it's all turned out the way it did.
Do you think that if you combine, remember it used to be a national championship like on any Sunday, you know, there were flat trackers and road racing, it's all combined. Do you think that could ever come back?
I don't know. I don't think so the way it's working out now. Gene Romero was the team manager for Honda in the road race, the flat track, and they tried to get me to do that because during one time of the season, 1982, I was leading the Grand National Championship points with my road racing finishes, and he tried, and I don't know why I didn't do it. I wish I would have now, but you know, I wanted to become a real road racer, and so I didn't do it. But
different mentality.
It is, and of course those guys didn't like me at all after the Astrodome. They hated me really a lot, but they were really upset with me after the Astrodome race, using the motocross lines and block passing them and coming in. One of my favorite photos, I passed a guy named Rick Arnaz, and I passed him for the lead in the semifinal, and I mean my elbow's in his face, you know. But that's motocross, you know, and they're not used to that stuff. But it's all good.
What about your Mugen episode when you were?
Well, in 1976, well, before Mugen, that was when I beat Bob Hannon and Marty Smith the day, what I call the perfect storm, because for a privateer to win any national race, it's almost impossible. But it just so happened that day was July 4th, 1976. It was July 4th and it was 75 degrees outside. I mean, you don't get those kind of days in Virginia. And we were running 40 minutes plus when you had to be a man. 40 minutes plus 2 laps. And Marty Smith got off the line bad. The first moto, I got the whole shot, and he caught me with 3 laps to go after 40 minutes. And I let him by because it was the first moto. I didn't want to waste any energy, and he had like 3 or 4 more inches travel suspension, and he had a works bike, and I was on a bike out of my father's Honda shop that my best friend at the time, Jimmy Strait, he ported the motor, we put a Mikuni on it, Girling gas shocks, FMF pipe, and went racing. And then the second moto there in fact, Davey Coombs' dad owned the track there in Maryland. At second moto, I got the whole shot again, as Smith got off the line about 20th. And I've got a photo, one of my favorite photos, it shows Dave Arnold showing the chalkboard to Marty Smith, and it says, Wise, place 1, plus 18. And I was 18 seconds ahead. When Marty finally got to second, I had him by 18 seconds. And after 40 minutes and 1 lap, he caught me. But that last lap, I was all over the track. We were either both going to go down, or he was going to go on the fence, and I ended up winning. So it was. I remember that like yesterday. It was a big downhill, and it turned at the bottom of the hill, and then up, and it was really, really rough. And Marty had 12 inches of travel. I had 6 inches, and we're coming up the hill, and my bike's bouncing, and I could feel him coming up this side, and I just went straight to the fence. I just went straight to the fence, and I heard him go, and I heard him shut off, and I knew. And the finish line was at the top of that hill. I knew I hadn't won then, because he lost all his momentum. And but I wasn't going to lead it for 40 minutes in 1 lap and then lose it on the last lap. It wasn't going to happen. And so that's kind of the way we played back then. But AMA, you would have fined me, but that's okay. But it was great. That was a great race. And then the next year, Cliff White built a Mugen 125 Honda for me. It was a great bike. And in fact, there's 2 or 3 of them out there. Copies. Newman has one. Got his first name. Anyway, Mr. Newman has one. And there's a couple of other ones out there. It was a beautiful motorcycle. Fox shocks. Fox sponsored me. We had all Mugen motor though, and it was a bike handled great. And I almost won a couple nationals. I got second twice. Was right there, just didn't pull one off.
Tell us a little bit about your ministry, what you're doing now.
Well, you know, in and I'm gonna tell the story tomorrow morning. Many people don't realize this, but in 1981. At the end of the year, I was beginning to ride really good again. I hurt myself early in the year. I broke my navicular bone, and I really was beginning to ride good. And I beat Bob Hanna at the Unadilla 250 Grand Prix that year. There's another one. I was leading the first moto with 2 laps to go, and the rear shock exploded. I got 4th, and then I won the second moto going away. And I could easily gone 1-1 that day. I got second behind the English guy, Neil Hudson, the guy that won the World Championship on the Yamaha, Neil Hudson. He ended up winning with a 2-3 or 2-2, and I had a 4-1, and I was riding really good. And that was the year that America, for some reason, decided not to go to the Trophy of the Nations. And Roger DeCoster, being the Honda team manager, he said, hey, Team Honda will go. And actually, I was going to be on the team with Danny Laporte, Chuck Sun, and Donnie Hansen, and me. And I was here in California testing the week before, and I fell off and bruised my ribs real bad. So some unknown rider that probably nobody knows took my place, named Johnny O'Mara. Anyway, he took my place, and they ended up winning, and what a great thing they did. But that weekend, in my house, in my home, I had some really incredible things happen to me where I realized that I needed to ask Jesus Christ to become the Lord of my life. And I just had this incredible desire to give my life to Him and just say, take over my life, Lord. And that was an experience that I'll never forget in my life, and it was the greatest thing that ever happened to me in my life. And out of that, we took some time and I started a ministry and kind of plodded along here and there. And I've been involved in real estate and different things like that. I've got my real estate license. And then just a few years ago, I really just decided to get really back full time. And the door's been wide open for me to come to the vintage races especially. So many of them know me, and it's back in my era, and I love being around these people. So really, there's so many open doors for me to come back to vintage events and just to share the love of God to people, and really not religion or church, so to speak, but really just a relationship with the living God in our heart. And that's all I desire to share, and so that's what I'm really doing.
Anything you'd like to add about any other things going on right now?
I'm just thankful to all the people, especially the vintage people that remember us old guys, and just it's just fun to be around and getting to know them better, and communicating with people, and it's fun being here. And I'm just thankful for the sport, the way it's evolved, and and honoring us old guys still. I guess it's fun. The new guys, you guys don't know how good you've got it because of us.
Speaking of new guys, what's your take on the new guys from Stewart to Reed to Dungey compared to the day when you were racing?
Well, I've heard many people say, boy, those guys are going so fast today. There's no way you guys would be able to compete. And I would tell them that's a bunch of baloney. Any top rider back then would have been a top rider today. And I'll guarantee you Bob Hanna would have been right there with Goat or whatever. These guys here, Bob Hanna would have been right there, and we all would have been. We ran 40-minute motos back then. Sure wish it had been 30-minute. I'd have won a whole bunch more. But I was leading a lot of the 30-minute mark. And then this guy named Ken Howerton and Bob Hanna were like animals. They were tough to beat at the end, into the race. But no, I think the riders are great, and I really respect Ryan Dungey and Villapoto. And of course, I know Trey Kennard very well. I know his family. I knew his dad. I spent the night in their house. The first night the Dallas Cowboys came back and won the Super Bowl in 1992, I was there at the Kennard's house teaching Trey's older brothers how to ride. And Trey was a little baby, and I played with him on the floor while we were watching the Super Bowl. So I know Kerry, Trey's mom, real good, and I love Trey. He's just such a good kid, and it's unfortunate he's had problems this year, but he's going to come back, and he's got incredible talent. And I mean, Dungey and Villapoto, what can you say? They're incredible. And Chad Reed probably is the most beautiful rider I've ever seen ride. He rides with beauty. It's unfortunate what happened to him in Minnesota, because you could tell he's really lost the eye of the tiger, and I totally understand. I mean, I understand that. When you fall off of a incredible crash like that, thank God he didn't get hurt, paralyzed for life. But this will probably be his last year. But there's no one that rides prettier than Chad Reed. No, I mean the beauty of his style. But Villapoto and Dungey and Kennard, no, they're great young men, and I respect them very much.
What's your take on Stewart?
Well, I think he's an incredible rider. I don't know if he knows how to think himself through the race. With the talent that kid has, I would have won every moto. So, I mean, I don't know why, he gets out these big, huge leads and then endos. I mean, that didn't happen in our day. If I had a big lead, I'm not going to do that. I mean, and I think he just kind of gets carried away with his own ability, because he's so good, and I think he trusts himself so much, and he thinks, hey. And he thinks he can do it, and then he ends up blowing it and wrecking the whole thing. But the kid's phenomenal. Hey, I mean, nobody can ride better than him, period. And if he could just learn to pull it down a little bit. See, my dad used to tell me something all the time. My dad would beat into my head. Don't show off and don't ride over your head. Don't show off and don't ride over your head. If you're going to cross it up or do something, do it on the last lap when you take the checkered flag. And but my dad would beat into my head, don't ride over your head. My dad was very smart man, and he would say, if you're going to ride over your head, do it in the corners. That you go down, well, you might lose a front end, or you might overshoot a berm. But don't ride over your head in the bumps or the big jumps, because that's where you hurt, that's where you die. And so my father infused that into me, of riding smart. And I think, of course, Roger DeCoster being my team manager in 1980 and 81, that surely didn't help anything. I wish I would have listened to him a lot more. But I knew more than he did. I was a young kid. And he was an old man, a 5-time world champion, but an old man. And but I was very fortunate to be around some people that really had a lot of smarts. But James, ride a little slower, buddy, and you'll win everything.